I knew the day was going sideways when I watched Wesley Brooks try to operate the coffee machine like he was defusing a bomb. The man had less technical sense than my grandson's hamster, but corporate had sent him down to streamline operations. In my line of work, streamline usually means fire the people who actually know how things work and replace them with cheaper alternatives who think cybersecurity is just another app you download. I'm Alex Carter, by the way. 47 years old, been doing cryptography for defense contractors since I got out of the Marines 22 years ago. Did 4 years active duty as a communications specialist in the Gulf, then transitioned to the private sector when I realized I could do the same job protecting America, but actually get paid what I was worth. I build the digital walls that keep foreign hackers from turning off your power grid or crashing your bank account. It's not glamorous work, but somebody's got to do it, and I happen to be very good at it. My kids, Emma and Noah, are both in college now. She's 19 studying engineering at Virginia Tech. He's 21 doing computer science at VCU. Smart kids, smarter than their old man in some ways. My ex-wife Diana and I split about 5 years ago when she decided she wanted something more exciting than a guy who spent his days staring at code. Can't say I blame her, but it stung at the time. Now I just focus on the work and making sure those college bills get paid. Wesley finally managed to get his coffee, turned around and gave me that tight-lipped nod that middle managers practice in bathroom mirrors, the kind of nod that says, I acknowledge your existence, but consider you a line item on a budget spreadsheet. Alex, he said, like he was acknowledging a piece of furniture that needed to be moved out of the way. Wesley, I replied, keeping my voice level. I've got a top-secret SCI clearance that would make his head spin, but to him I'm just some legacy employee who doesn't laugh at his efficiency optimization jokes. I'd been watching Wesley for the past 3 weeks since he arrived from corporate headquarters in Atlanta. He had that hungry look of a middle manager trying to make his mark, the kind of guy who thinks 25 years of institutional knowledge is dead weight that needs trimming. He'd been spending a lot of time with Charles Hoffman, our CEO, talking about right-sizing and modernization initiatives. Corporate speak for firing experienced people and replacing them with cheaper alternatives. The thing that worried me most was how he kept hovering around the IT admin desk, asking questions about system access and user privileges. I'd caught him twice trying to peek at security protocols that were way above his clearance level. When I mentioned it to Staff Sergeant McDonald, our security chief, Mac just shrugged and said Wesley had executive authorization to review operational procedures. Before I get into how this LinkedIn profile in a suit tried to destroy my career, let me tell you something. 22 years I've been protecting critical systems. I've seen what happens when inexperienced people get their hands on classified networks. It's not pretty, and it's not fixable with a restart button. Back in '99, I watched a contractor in Kuwait nearly bring down an entire communications network because he thought he could improve the encryption algorithm. Took us 3 days to restore secure communications, and by then half the regional intelligence network was compromised. That's when I learned that in this business, there's no such thing as a small mistake. Everything is connected, and one weak link can bring down the entire chain. I walked back to my office, what we call the vault. It's a windowless room kept at exactly 68 degrees with enough computing power to run a small city. The walls are lined with servers that hum with the quiet confidence of properly secured systems. This is where I do my real work, building encryption protocols that would take a supercomputer 1,000 years to crack. The vault is my domain. I designed the physical layout, specified every piece of equipment, and personally configured the security protocols. The biometric scanner recognizes my palm print, retina pattern, and voice signature. There are exactly 3 people in this building with access to this room. Me, Charles Hoffman, and Agent Sarah Martinez from the Defense Counterintelligence and Security Agency, who comes by quarterly for inspections. I sat down at my terminal and pulled up the morning security logs. Everything looked normal at first glance. Authentication logs clean. No failed login attempts, network traffic within normal parameters. But I've been doing this long enough to spot anomalies that would slip past most analysts. There was a pattern in the access timestamps that bothered me. Small delays in authentication responses, packets taking fractionally longer routes than they should. To most people, we're talking about milliseconds that wouldn't even register. To me, those delays meant someone was routing data through additional checkpoints, creating digital breadcrumbs that shouldn't exist. I was putting the finishing touches on a new encryption layer for a cross-agency communications pipeline. This wasn't your typical corporate IT project. This was the kind of system that keeps generals talking to admirals without foreign intelligence services listening in. The kind of system that, if compromised, could give hostile nations advance warning of military operations or diplomatic negotiations. My fingers moved across the keyboard with the rhythm of 22 years of practice. every keystroke mattered. One misplaced semicolon, one weak handshake protocol, and half the East Coast military communications could be compromised. The cursor blinked steadily as code compiled line by line, building a fortress of mathematics that would protect conversations between people who make decisions about war and peace. I locked my workstation using the same protocol I've followed for over 2 decades. Lock screen, remove security token, verify clean logout, secure physical access. I never skip steps. Shortcuts get people killed. In Bosnia back in '95, I watched a comm specialist take a bathroom break without properly securing his terminal. 15 minutes later, enemy forces had intercepted our frequency rotation schedule. We lost 2 forward observation posts that night because someone thought procedure was optional. I headed out to grab lunch, but something felt off at the security checkpoint. I swiped my badge and got a red light. That shouldn't happen. These badges are hard-coded with RFID chips tracked by multiple satellites. The system knows my location, my clearance level, my access history going back 15 years. A failure isn't a glitch. It's a statement that someone somewhere has decided I'm no longer authorized to be where I've worked every day for the past decade. I tried again, wiping the badge on my sleeve out of habit. Still red. Security. This is Alex Carter. Badge reader on Sector 7 is acting up. The voice that came back wasn't Mac's familiar gravelly tone. It was young, nervous, unfamiliar. Hold on, Mr. Carter. System says there's a sync issue. I'll buzz you through manually. Sync issue. In a closed-loop system designed by the NSA, that's like saying a nuclear submarine has a screen door problem. It's technically impossible unless someone with very high-level access has been making unauthorized modifications to the authentication database. I made it through the manual override, but my instincts were screaming. 26 years of military and contractor experience teaches you to trust those instincts. Something was moving in the shadows, and I was starting to think I might be the target. I got my lunch from the cafeteria, a sandwich that tasted like cardboard and regret, and ate it while my brain worked the problem. Wesley had been hanging around the IT admin desk for the past week asking questions about user access protocols and system architecture. I'd seen him twice in conversations with Damian Rodriguez, the new systems administrator we'd hired 3 months ago. Damian was one of those Silicon Valley refugees who talked a good game about disrupting legacy infrastructure, but couldn't troubleshoot his way out of a paper bag. Fresh out of some coding boot camp, full of confidence and completely lacking in judgment. The kind of guy who thought security protocols were just obstacles to efficiency. When I got back to the building, my badge worked on the main entrance turnstile, but there was a delay. A fraction of a second lag between the swipe and the green light. To most people, that's nothing. To me, that's a data packet being routed through additional authentication servers, creating logs where logs shouldn't exist. Someone was monitoring my access patterns, building a digital paper trail. I took the stairs instead of the elevator, old Marine habit of always having an exit strategy. The 4th floor hallway was unusually quiet. Perry Washington, one of my junior analysts, was at his desk looking uncomfortable. "Hey Perry, everything all right?" He glanced around nervously. "Alex, can I talk to you?" Privately, we stepped into a conference room. Perry was 26, fresh out of Georgia Tech, with a master's degree in cybersecurity. Good kid, reminded me of myself at that age, eager to prove himself but smart enough to ask questions when something didn't make sense. "I've been monitoring the network traffic like you taught me," he said. "There's something weird happening, unauthorized queries running against the personnel database. Someone's been pulling access logs, clearance records, employment history, whose records, yours, and about 6 other senior staff members. All the guys with over 15 years experience. My blood pressure spiked, but I kept my voice calm. When did this start? 3 weeks ago. Right after the new management consultant arrived, Wesley. The pieces were falling into place like a tactical pattern recognition exercise. He wasn't here to streamline operations. He was here to conduct intelligence gathering for a personnel purge. The classic corporate playbook. Identify your highest paid employees, build a case for their dismissal, replace them with cheaper alternatives. "Perry, I need you to do something for me. Can you trace the source of those queries?" "Already did. They're coming from an admin account that was created 2 days after Wesley Brooks arrived. The account has elevated privileges that bypass most of our monitoring systems, who authorized the account creation. Charles Hoffman signed off on it. Emergency management access for operational review. Our CEO had handed Wesley the keys to our personnel kingdom. This wasn't just cost-cutting. This was a coordinated attack on institutional knowledge. I got back to the vault and sat down at my terminal. Everything looked exactly as I'd left it, but there was something different about the desktop environment. A terminal window minimized in the corner that I hadn't opened. a file directory timestamp that was 20 minutes newer than when I'd locked the system. Someone had accessed my workstation while I was at lunch. I didn't move the mouse. I didn't gasp or curse or do any of the things a normal person might do when they realize their secure workspace has been compromised. 26 years of experience had taught me to become part of the furniture when gathering intelligence. I pulled up the access logs using a keyboard shortcut sequence that bypasses the standard graphical interface. A little trick I'd programmed for myself back in 2018 when I suspected a contract employee of selling system vulnerabilities to foreign buyers. The raw logs told a story that would make any security professional break into a cold sweat. Someone had accessed my terminal at 12:47 p.m. using administrator override credentials. They'd attempted to copy the entire classified project directory but failed because their command syntax was wrong. Amateur hour. They'd tried to export files to divided blunel, probably thinking it was a hidden folder, when in reality they'd just sent everything into a digital black hole. The intrusion was clumsy, obvious, and completely unauthorized. But it was also evidence that someone with admin access was trying to steal classified defense projects. That's not a firing offense, that's federal prison territory. I reached into my pocket and pulled out what looked like an ordinary tube of lip balm. It wasn't. Inside the plastic casing was a high-capacity USB drive specifically designed to look like something you'd find in any office worker's desk drawer. I'd learned this particular trick from a counterintelligence seminar back in 2015. I plugged the device into a maintenance port on the back of my tower, a connection point that isn't monitored by standard data loss prevention software because I'd personally written the monitoring exceptions during the system's initial configuration. I initiated a silent backup of the server activity logs, every keystroke, every failed authentication attempt, every unauthorized system query from the past 72 hours. The transfer ran quietly in the background while I continued my normal work routine, building plausible deniability in case anyone was monitoring my screen activity. You want to play intelligence games, Wesley? I thought to myself. Let's see how good you really are. The download finished in 8 minutes. I pocketed the lip balm device, straightened my jacket, and went back to coding like nothing had happened. But the air in the vault had changed. It no longer smelled like ozone and recycled air. It smelled like a trap being carefully constructed around me. The summons came at 9 a.m. sharp the next morning. An Outlook calendar invitation titled Personnel Review Meeting, with high importance flagging, no agenda attached, no additional details. Just me, Wesley Brooks, and Linda Thompson from Human Resources, a nervous woman who'd been with the company for 8 years and had never fired anyone more senior than a summer intern. I arrived exactly on time. Military punctuality is a hard habit to break, and it tends to unsettle people who mistake promptness for eagerness. The conference room had those glass walls that pretend to offer privacy while ensuring everyone in the office could watch your professional execution. Wesley was already seated, wearing a navy blazer over khakis, the uniform of middle management trying to project authority they hadn't earned. He had a manila folder positioned precisely in front of him, tapping it rhythmically with his index finger like he was sending Morse code signals. Linda Thompson sat to his right, shuffling through a stack of papers with the nervous energy of someone who knew she was about to participate in something morally questionable but legally defensible. "Alex, please sit down," Wesley said, gesturing to the chair across from them. His voice carried that false gravity that consultants practice in front of mirrors. I remained standing for exactly 3 seconds longer than socially comfortable. Another old military trick that establishes subtle dominance before taking the offered seat. "Good morning, Wesley. Linda, is there an issue with the cross-agency communications project? The encryption layer completed final testing yesterday." "This meeting isn't about your current assignments," Wesley replied, opening his folder with theatrical precision. "We've received notification from the Defense Office of Personnel Management regarding your security clearance status." He slid a single sheet of paper across the table. Company letterhead, formatted in official-looking Arial font, but no federal watermarks or authentication codes that would accompany genuine government correspondence. I read the document without touching it. Subject: Security Clearance Administrative Review. Agent: Alexander Carter. Status: expired pending reinvestigation. Effective date: immediate. The document was a masterpiece of bureaucratic fiction. It cited non-existent regulations, referenced phantom oversight committees, and claimed authorization from agencies that don't handle contractor clearances. Someone had spent considerable time researching government procedures just enough to fool HR departments and corporate executives who'd never actually dealt with federal security protocols. "This is creative fiction, Wesley," I said, keeping my voice level and professional. "My TS/SCI clearance is current through 2027. The periodic reinvestigation was completed 18 months ago with no adverse findings. Furthermore, Clearance revocations are communicated directly to the subject through secure federal channels, not through corporate human resources. Wesley's eye twitched slightly. He'd expected confused compliance, not informed resistance. The bureaucracy can be complicated, he replied, falling back on his rehearsed talking points. What matters is that Fortress Defense Systems can't legally employ personnel with lapsed security credentials. It's a liability issue. Show me the official notification. I said federal security revocations include specific case numbers, reviewing official signatures, and appeal procedures. This document has none of those elements. Linda Thompson cleared her throat nervously. Alex, we understand this is frustrating, but company policy requires immediate action when clearance issues arise. We've prepared a separation package, 4 weeks severance plus extended health benefits. If you sign the voluntary resignation agreement today, we can process everything smoothly. 4 weeks severance. For 22 years of service protecting critical defense systems, the insult was almost artistic in its precision. I'm not signing anything, I stated clearly. If you're terminating my employment, document it officially. Put fired due to security clearance revocation in my personnel file. Make it part of the permanent record. Wesley's mask of professional courtesy slipped for just a moment, revealing the predatory satisfaction underneath. Fine, Alex. We'll do this the hard way, effective immediately. Your employment with Fortress Defense Systems is terminated. Please surrender your access credentials. I reached into my laptop bag and placed my security badge on the conference table, the RFID card that had been my identity for over a decade. Next to it, I set down my RSA authentication token, the small device that generated rotating access codes every 30 seconds. What about the encryption keys for the current projects? Wesley asked, leaning forward slightly. There it was, the real objective behind this elaborate charade. He didn't just want me gone, he wanted control of the cryptographic systems I'd spent years developing. In his corporate consultant mind, he probably imagined he could hand those keys to some cheaper replacement and claim credit for modernizing the department. The encryption keys aren't physical objects, Wesley. I explained slowly, as if teaching basic concepts to someone genuinely confused. They're algorithmic sequences that regenerate every 6 hours based on biometric authentication patterns. The system requires my personal security profile, retinal scan, palm print, voice pattern recognition to generate valid keys. There must be some way to transfer access, he insisted. There is. It requires federal oversight, security interviews, and about 6 months of bureaucratic processing. You'd need to submit formal requests through the Defense Counterintelligence and Security Agency, provide detailed justification for the transfer, and undergo extensive background verification. Wesley's face was turning an interesting shade of red. His quick corporate solution was colliding with the reality of how classified systems actually work. We'll figure it out, he snapped. Staff Sergeant McDonald will escort you from the building. I stood up, gathering my dignity like armor. Wesley, you really don't understand what you're dealing with here. This isn't updating software or replacing office equipment. These are national defense systems with safeguards built by people much smarter than either of us. As I walked toward the door, Wesley called out behind me, "Your replacement starts Monday." Fresh perspective, modern approaches. I paused at the threshold. Good luck with that. Mac walked me to the main entrance, his weathered face showing genuine confusion. 20 years of military police experience had taught him to spot real security threats, and firing the lead cryptographer didn't fit any threat pattern he recognized. This doesn't make sense, Alex, he said quietly as we reached the lobby. Your clearance file shows active status through 2027. I checked the system myself after Wesley's people started asking questions. Keep that information close, Mac. Something bigger is happening here. I got in my car and sat there for exactly 60 seconds, hands steady on the steering wheel. Not from fear or shock, but from the controlled adrenaline rush of a professional who just watched someone make a catastrophic mistake. Wesley had lied about federal security credentials. That's not a corporate policy violation or an HR issue. That's a felony carrying mandatory prison time. And I had evidence. I didn't drive home to sulk or update my resume. I drove to an unmarked office building 5 miles from the base, a federal liaison facility where cleared personnel can report security breaches through channels that bypass potentially compromised corporate management. The parking lot contained the usual collection of government vehicles, black SUVs, unmarked sedans, and pickup trucks that looked civilian but had too many antennas. I grabbed my lip balm USB drive and walked into the building that didn't officially exist on any public directory. 48 hours later, Wesley Brooks discovered the difference between corporate authority and federal oversight. I wasn't there to watch the unraveling, but Perry Washington called me that morning with updates that sounded like something from a spy thriller. Military police had arrived at 7 a.m. in 3 black Suburbans. Agent Martinez from the Defense Counterintelligence and Security Agency was conducting interviews with senior staff. Wesley and Charles Hoffman were in separate conference rooms with federal investigators who didn't accept corporate explanations for security protocol violations. The best part, Damian Rodriguez, Wesley's hand-picked replacement, had managed to trigger every security alarm in our digital infrastructure. Apparently, his modern approach to encryption involved downloading open-source code libraries from public repositories and attempting to integrate them into classified defense systems. The automated intrusion detection systems interpreted his actions as a coordinated cyber attack and initiated lockdown protocols that would take weeks to reverse. By 10 a.m., Fortress Defense Systems had lost its primary government contracts. By noon, Wesley Brooks was in federal custody. By 2 p.m., Agent Martinez was calling my personal phone with a job offer that came with a significant pay increase and direct federal employment status. Mr. Carter, the department needs someone with your expertise to lead a new cybersecurity initiative. No more corporate middlemen, no more cost-cutting consultants. Just you, your team, and the resources necessary to protect critical infrastructure. I accepted on the spot. The transition meeting took place in the same conference room where Wesley had tried to destroy my career 72 hours earlier. Agent Martinez sat where Wesley had been, but her folder contained actual federal documents with real signatures and legitimate authority. The investigation revealed systematic security violations, she explained. Mr. Brooks falsified federal clearance documents, authorized unauthorized access to classified systems, and attempted to transfer sensitive defense technologies to uncleared personnel. Mr. Hoffman signed off on security protocol changes without proper federal notification. She slid a real federal employment offer across the table. We're establishing a new Defense Cyber Operations Division. You'd be the senior technical director, reporting directly to the Pentagon. Your first assignment would be rebuilding the systems that Mr. Rodriguez managed to compromise. 3 months later, I was sitting in a much larger office with actual windows and a budget that didn't require justifying every equipment purchase to cost-cutting consultants. My new team included Perry Washington, who'd earned a security clearance upgrade for his role in documenting the security breaches, and 12 other experienced professionals rescued from various corporate contractors who'd prioritized profits over protection. Wesley Brooks pleaded guilty to federal fraud charges and received 3 years in minimum security prison, plus a lifetime ban from government contracting. Damian Rodriguez was quietly escorted back to California with instructions never to apply for security clearances. Charles Hoffman lost Fortress Defense Systems when their remaining contracts were terminated for security violations. The morning news mentioned a routine restructuring of defense contractor oversight, but the real story never made headlines. Corporate executives don't like admitting they nearly compromised national security to save money on payroll. I kept the lip balm USB drive as a reminder that documentation beats desperation every time. It sits in my desk drawer next to a commendation letter from the Secretary of Defense and a photo of Emma and Noah at their college graduations, paid for with my new federal salary and the satisfaction that comes from work that actually matters. Looking back, Wesley Brooks did me the biggest favor of my career. His greedy incompetence freed me from corporate bureaucracy and connected me with people who understand that protecting America isn't a budget line item to be optimized. Sometimes the best revenge is just letting people destroy themselves while you document the process. I've told this story to a few guys I know, veterans, contractors, guys who've been around long enough to recognize the pattern. They all ask the same thing: what's the takeaway? You know what the real lesson here is? It's not about corporate politics or office revenge stories. It's about something much more fundamental. There's a difference between price and value that too many people in positions of authority refuse to understand. They see a salary and think it's an expense to be minimized. They don't see the decades of experience, the institutional knowledge, the professional relationships that keep critical systems running when everything else fails. Every organization has people like Wesley Brooks, managers who mistake cost-cutting for leadership, who think expertise is replaceable with enthusiasm, who believe that loyalty should flow upward while trust flows downward. And every organization has people like me, professionals who do the real work, who maintain the standards, who remember why the rules exist even when it's inconvenient. The system works when the right people are watching, when competent authority figures recognize actual expertise and support it with proper resources, when documentation matters more than politics and results matter more than relationships. If you're reading this and recognizing your own workplace, remember that experience has value, competence has power, and sometimes the most professional thing you can do is refuse to be complicit in someone else's incompetence. The code always remembers, and there's always someone watching the watchers, even when they think they've turned off all the cameras.